Have you ever had a teacher that you really liked? You know, they would treat you really nice, they were always kind and polite. Well, in this case, this teacher liked her students a little bit too much.
As this award-winning teacher is now behind bars for allegedly having sex with a student.
And the craziest part about this whole thing is that she won the Teacher of the Year in San Diego County.
Congratulations again on the honor. What did it mean to you to be selected?
It still feels a little surreal. I really wanted to make sure our students here in National City were afforded the same opportunities with STEM exposure.
Well, she also exposed them to something a lot more than just STEM.
Well, we wish you well. Congratulations to you and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
How the hell do you go from being Teacher of the Year to Pedophile of the Year? She seems really polite, respectful, intelligent, the type of person that you would never expect to do something like this. But it's always the people that you expect the least. Because in March 2023, Jacqueline Ma was arrested for the first time.
Anger from parents in National City after a teacher at Lincoln Acres Elementary School was arrested, accused of sexual misconduct with a former student.
And Jesse and Marcella, I reached out to that teacher, Jacqueline Ma, for comment on her arrest and the charges she faces. And while she has remained quiet.
Yeah, I don't think that if you reach out to a pedophile and ask them, hey, why did you do that? That they would probably want to respond to that.
34-year-old Jacqueline Ma, who teaches 6th grade at Lincoln Acres Elementary in National City, was arrested yesterday morning at her school.
I remember when I was in 6th grade, we were just learning about the reproductive system. And this teacher decided, you know what? I don't want to teach kids about the reproductive system just by reading textbooks. That's super boring. Let me demonstrate.
Now, this came after police say they were contacted by a concerned parent who suspected that her 13-year-old had an inappropriate relationship with a former teacher.
And when the news broke out, the entire community couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I'm angry because she was such a good teacher and she helped my son a lot. It's hard to believe because she was such a good teacher.
Yeah, it would be appropriate for her to be registered as a sex offender as well.
If proven guilty with evidence. If it's not, it should not be in her record. And everybody should be treated equal to proven guilty, period.
Notice how some of these parents are just having such a hard time believing that this actually happened. And they're being really rational too. They're saying, look, she has to go to court. She has to be proven guilty with evidence. And then based on that, yeah, send her to the slammer. But they're not just immediately jumping to saying, yeah, what a horrible piece of shit. She was so bad. I hated her, man. Fuck that teacher. But the teacher ended up being a pedophile. So if you hated her from the beginning, well, you guessed right.
She now faces a number of felony charges, including lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14 and oral copulation. Ma has since posted $100,000 bond and is currently free as she awaits her arraignment.
So shortly after she got arrested, she was released on a $100,000 bail. But just 2 days later, she got arrested again. And this time, there were additional charges. Things like having inappropriate photos of a child, which is basically CP, and then trying to intimidate a witness.
A National City teacher rearrested today, and tonight she is facing more than a dozen felony charges.
The teacher now facing 14 new felony charges, including 2 counts of lewd acts with a child under the age of 14, 7 counts of possession of child pornography, 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a child, and 1 count of dissuading a victim or witness.
She's thinking, look, I can't risk doing something with the child again. So you know what? Let me just gather all the photos that I can get so that I can just, do stuff with those photos. And then if a single person tries to snitch on me, ooh, I'm gonna give it to him. So the appropriate response this time by the police was, let's just hold her in jail without bail.
Teacher of the Year was initially given a bail of $100,000, which she posted before ending up back in jail.
And currently there is no bail amount listed for Ma.
After she got rearrested, now nobody was on her side. Nobody was gonna say, well, we gotta wait for things to play out. Everybody was against her, and even some of her former students were starting to piece the puzzle together.
I go to Sweetwater, so I would go to sports events, and she would be there. And I would say, Miss Ma, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I'm here to see a former student. And now I'm going through my head, like, how does she have contact with that student? How does she know all these things?
Notice how this girl said she would go to Sweetwater. That's not the same name of the school where Jacqueline Ma was teaching. So Jacqueline Ma was going to a different school to see a former student. If that doesn't raise a red flag to you, kind of like I have this red shirt on, I don't know what would.
All the red flags that we've collected together is more than enough to think maybe this is true. Maybe whatever has been going on for a long time. Maybe she's always had these horrible intentions and we just couldn't pick up on it due to just being young-minded.
So that goes back to an earlier point that I was saying. She would threaten anybody who would witness her doing something like this. So it probably doesn't come as a surprise that Jacqueline Ma was doing this for many years and forcing everybody who was a part of it to just hush about it. So as the investigation continued, things got a lot worse, because now a second boy comes forward who was 11 years old, and Jacqueline Ma now has evidence against her proving that she was having very sexual interactions with an 11-year-old kid. Like you're a teacher in your 30s. You're telling me you can't go to a bar, you can't go to a club, you can't meet people online? Why are you going after kids who don't even know what sex is?
First, the judge heard testimony from one of the young alleged victims, whom prosecutors say began this inappropriate relationship with his teacher, Jacqueline Ma, when he was just 11 years old. So he weren't allowed inside the courtroom during his testimony.
Imagine being a victim so young that you're not even allowed to go into the courtroom.
Now, just as the hearing was getting underway, it appeared Ma was emotional. She was wiping her eyes.
You can see Jacqueline Ma crying here, not because she feels horrible for what she did, but because she realized she fucked up and got caught, even after trying to hide all the evidence this whole time.
Prosecution argued the boy has suffered psychological damage from other kids making fun of him. So his argument was, let's protect his identity as much as possible. He's already been through so much.
Jesus Christ, kids are fucking cruel. Could you imagine being a victim of a rape and then your classmates are just making fun of you for it?
Now, Ma faces numerous sexual misconduct charges. She's accused of having inappropriate relationships with 2 different students.
So some of the evidence that came forward in court included the text conversations that Jacqueline Ma had with these kids. She would have sexual conversations, she would send sexual photos, and she even sent gifts to the kids, almost as if to lessen the blow or let them know, hey, look, I'm a good person. You do something that makes me happy and I'll give you gifts. Okay? This is how it works. You know, we're not doing anything wrong here. We're just having a mutual exchange. Except you're having a mutual exchange with a kid who doesn't even know how to consent.
Miss Ma, oh my God, do not forget my underwear is in your pocket.
Okay, anyone that has underwear so small that it could fit inside of your pocket would raise a huge red flag on anybody.
John Doe 1, I love you, winky face. Jackie, I love you too, like I'm actually in love with you.
Now, if you're 13 years old, you don't know what the fuck love is. I don't care how many times you see that girl in class and you're like, oh, I love you, I want you to be my girlfriend. When you're that young, you don't know what the fuck love is, let alone loving someone who is 3 times your age. And you can hear the panic in the kid. Oh my God, teacher, don't forget, my underwear is in your pocket. And her response is, well, I love you. Holy shit.
Keep in mind, in the background of all of this, plea negotiations continue. Preliminary hearing is expected to wrap up today with just these 2 witnesses. So I'm going to head back inside the courtroom and I will let you know what happens.
So Jacqueline Ma initially said that she was not guilty to all of her charges, and her case was set to go in trial in April of 2025. But in a surprising turn of events, Jacqueline Ma changed her plea to guilty just a couple days ago, in February 2025.
A stunning twist in the case of a former Teacher of the Year accused of having sex with former students. Jacqueline Ma changed her plea to guilty.
Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The former National City Teacher of the Year admitting to lewd and sexual acts with 2 minors under the age of 14. Acts she admits were done using duress for her own pleasure.
Is that true?
Yes.
So as part of her plea deal, the remaining charges were dropped, and Jacqueline Ma accepted the potential prison sentence of 30 years to life with the possibility of parole.
Before now, the former Lincoln Acres elementary teacher would have been sentenced to 180 years to life in prison. Now she faces 30 years to life with a possibility of parole.
With this resolution, we're sparing the victims from having to come in and testify in front of a jury.
Now some people might be saying 30 years? She's getting off easy. She ruined these kids' entire lives, and she only has to serve 30 years in prison? And on top of that, she had her other charges dropped? Now remember, her sentence was 30 years to life. And that means that Jacqueline Ma needs to serve a minimum of 30 years in prison before she becomes eligible for parole. But just because she might be eligible for parole doesn't mean that she's automatically going to get released from prison. If the parole board denies her release, she could stay in prison for life. And as far as her dropped charges, that's kind of just how plea deals work. Prosecutors often drop lesser charges so that they can secure a guilty plea on the more serious charges. So I wouldn't say that she was just completely left off the hook. She's still going to be facing serious punishment for it, and she might be in prison for the rest of her life. But regardless of whatever your opinion is about the outcome of this case, at least we don't have to worry about the teacher sexually assaulting any children anymore. And if there's one thing I learned about this case, watch out for anyone that wins Teacher of the Year. That's all I got for now. Take care.